Hello and welcome to another episode of Cardiometabolic Beat, brought to you by the Cardiometabolic Health Congress. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Ahmed Soliman, Associate Medical Director at Houston Methodist DeBakey Cardiology Associates in Houston, Texas. Dr. Soliman is focused on optimizing primary and secondary cardiovascular disease prevention through the use of digital health tools, and perhaps there is no better time to discuss the role of digital health tools and telemedicine in general, given the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Soliman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Dr. Soliman, have you seen an increase in telemedicine consults in your practice with the advent of COVID-19?
Definitely. So I was in practice for about a year and a half before COVID-19 started, and I started telemedicine. And at that point, it was more of a cash pay convenience process for patients, as much because there was no billing for it at that point. But I'll tell you, in our practice of now almost about 50 plus cardiologists, spring break 2020, that week, we went from just me doing telemedicine to literally everybody doing telemedicine that week. And it's been growing since then, although as the pandemic has been decreasing or somewhat improving, and things have been becoming a little bit more lax, we're getting almost a 40, 60, 50, 50% in regards to telemedicine versus in person. So as an overall number, compared to a year or two before the pandemic, it definitely has increased. And people are becoming a lot more familiar with it, both physicians and clinicians and patients.
Thank you. In your practice as a cardiologist, what types of visits are more appropriate for telemedicine? For example, is it more appropriate for preventive follow-up visits, or could other types of visits be suited?
The way I look at how you implement telemedicine in your practice, I break it down into kind of different categories. Number one, diagnostic. So the relatively simple stuff that you know that you will most probably have to get imaging for can be initiated by telemedicine. For example, a patient that complains of palpitations or atypical chest pain or stuff like that, that is referred to you by a primary care doctor, that you have access to the initial EKG and the initial lab work and so forth. Most probably these patients will be getting a treadmill stress test or an echocardiogram. So for the sake of convenience for a patient that, for example, lives 1-2 hours away, instead of coming in for the initial visit and then coming back in again for these imaging studies, you can do the initiation by telemedicine. If that initial prep demonstrates that that patient will probably need to come back in again. The other part would be the treatment part. So the things that you need for treatment, for example, for cholesterol, for high blood pressure, weight management, stuff that you can manage virtually or remotely using data. The data being the patient's information or blood pressure information or weight information or activity information, stuff like that. So that kind of break it down between the diagnostic part and the treatment and the continuous treatment part. Obviously, follow-up is extremely important because you need to explain to patients their tests. So what more relaxing environment can you talk to a patient than in their own home? I've had patients do their televisits from home, from work during their lunch hour. I've had even patients in their car. They would leave work to go and sit in their car to have that chat. But it makes things a lot more convenient for patients while you're still able to give them the information that they need.
Dr. Soliman, what are some tips you can share about successful telemedicine visits?
I think one of the most important parts of a successful telemedicine visit is that both the clinician and the patient know very well their limits, meaning knowing very well what can a telemedicine visit do and cannot do. The other part is the prep. It's always, how the saying, it's always in the prep. The preparation of a patient's virtual visit I think is extremely important. And that preparation includes, could be a questionnaire, could be uploaded data from a blood pressure device, can be explanation of the symptoms that a patient is complaining of or would like to follow up with. For example, you know, doctor, I've reviewed my test results. I would like to discuss, A, B, and C, and how does that impact my symptom that I initially came to you for, or so forth. So the preparation and understanding what the visit is for, and um, whatever monitoring that you're doing, which is an extremely important part of telemedicine, those are very important parts of the preparation. The other part of the important part, the other important part of preparation is the technical aspect, because this is a frustrating point from the patient side and from the clinician side, that there are systems to make sure that the patient's internet is working, that the patient portal, if they're using a patient portal to use the telemedicine platform, is working, and they've tried it. And on your end, as a clinician, you have, you know, basic knowledge of how this works and what can be done for simple stuff to reset or to turn off the visit and restart it again. Simple stuff from the patient side or from the clinician side to make sure that the visit goes well throughout the whole visit.
How has the regulatory landscape and billing for telemedicine changed in the COVID-19 era?
So the billing initially, I would like to say, I think it was late March when they equated the regular visits billing to the telemedicine visits. But I have to tell you, even before COVID-19, there was a clear movement through CMS in regards to telemedicine. You'll find even a lot of private commercial insurance companies also moving towards telemedicine, because it is showing how efficient and better access you can get for patients through telemedicine. So I think it's still a work in progress, although there has been some changes over the last couple of months. But the way we have to look at it is not just a matter of just the billing part. It's a matter of the convenience for both the clinician and the patient. When we compare both of these, you can make an argument that telemedicine visits for the vast majority of our follow-up patients, for example, can have a significant impact on patient care, because you can now see a patient a little bit more often. You can use remote monitoring services, part of telemedicine, as continuing care. Instead of seeing a patient once every 6 months or once every year, you can see the patient a little bit more often. And in those cases, there are remote monitoring billing services that are available. So telemedicine is kind of grouped together with remote monitoring services. But the straight up, regular in-person visit compared to a telemedicine visit, you also have to put into mind that you have overhead expenses for the in-person visit. Those overhead expenses include your clinic, your staff, and so forth. So it can't be really a head-to-head comparison. It has to be an overall comparison.
Thank you. And final question, do you see telemedicine being a player in the long term?
Definitely. I think it's already, like my boss used to say, it's already out of the box. It's not going back in the box again. There has been, even before COVID-19, there has been quite a few physicians and clinicians trying to implement telemedicine in their practices and in their institutions. It was an uphill battle, mainly because of billing at that point and because of the culture. Nobody's used to that. But as you see in the digital world, for anything, banking, for a lot of different industries, things have changed to a digital platform dramatically. You could make an argument that actually the medical field is actually very slow to catch up in regards to the digital world, but it will, because it provides the convenience that patients, the quote unquote customers, need, customers in other industries like banking or shopping or so forth, once they deal with the digital world, they find it a lot more faster and convenient and get what they need. The medical world is relatively similar. You're able to get the information you need, the workup you need, the visit with your physician, all in a convenient environment for you. So I think the shift is going to gradually move towards a digital platform. It is not 100% because we are still dealing with, medicine, medical management of patients. So it is not 100%. Digital world is not here to replace the in-person visits or the current management that we are currently doing, but it is going to be an extremely helpful tool to provide better care and better access to care for patients. So I definitely think it's not here just to stay. It's going to be exploding over the next few years.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soliman, for your time and expertise today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
And thanks to all for listening. If you have any questions or you have any feedback on topics you would like to discuss in future episodes, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at info@cardiometabolichealth.org. Thank you, and until next time.